For some Australians, this is now their only way around. Along Australia's east coast, Cyclone Debbie has cut off roads and destroyed bridges.
Great amount of effort has been focused the last 24 hours on flood rescues, making sure people are safe and can get away from areas where they're being caught out. And we're pretty comfortable we've got most of those in hand now.
Cyclone Debbie is a Category 4 storm. The most powerful are classified as 5. It's now moved out to sea, but not before smashing through tourist resorts and bringing down power lines. People from several communities in Queensland and New South Wales are being evacuated as torrential rains continue to fall, leaving more than 100,000 homes without power. 6 large rivers have flooded and others are continuing to rise.
It's a very dangerous time in these flooded areas. I want to say to everybody who is affected by these floods, do not go into flooded waters. So do not cross flooded roads. If it's flooded, forget it. Follow the advice of the local authorities. They know what they're doing. They will keep you safe. Now, we've had two fatalities. 2 women in New South Wales have died as a result of these floods.
Emergency officials say they have rescued hundreds of people, many who hadn't listened to evacuation orders.
Those dangerous tornadoes and floods causing major damage. ABC's Steve Osunsami is on the ground in hard-hit Fairfield, Alabama with more. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning to you, Robin. I'm standing in front of what's left of a state liquor store that took a direct hit. There's the whiskey aisle right there. The J&B and the Dewar's are still standing on their shelves. But look at what happened to the poor bourbon. It was torn apart. All of this is a total loss. This town was caught by surprise by this storm. There were people inside these businesses at the time. This is what's left of an oil service station. As you can see, the walls were torn apart by the high winds. For many, this was a rough night of wild weather across the South.
It just hit here in Fairfield. It was big, guys. It was really big.
A confirmed EF2 tornado came tearing through the small town just outside Birmingham, terrorizing families and destroying their businesses. 4 people were hurt. The only thing left standing here, these 2 shelves.
It lasted about 2 or 3 minutes and it was gone.
Even from a distance, you could see the 120-mile-an-hour winds. People here had to run for cover. The violent winds cut through power lines. This morning, more than 1,000 people here are still without power. What's left of Cindy is not going away quietly across the South. The strong winds plus the high tide added to the heavy rains were more than enough to flood this highway. And just off the coast of Pensacola, this water spout was spinning up less than a mile from shore.
Oh my Lord!
Authorities are still telling some families that they still need to leave their homes for higher ground. More than a foot of rain is soaking parts of Mississippi, leaving people in this neighborhood nearly underwater.
The water is up about 3 or 4 more feet than yesterday.
Even the fire ants are trying to beat the rain.
Beachgoers may have been surprised to see thousands of jellyfish on one of the world's most beautiful beaches this past weekend. Local man Justin Silvestre Albo posted pictures to Facebook of the bloom on June 16th. The pictures appear to show thousands of jellyfish covering Nacpan Beach in El Nido, Philippines. According to local reports, the municipal government may temporarily close the beach. Ocean currents and climate change may contribute to the sizes of big blooms like this one.
In an earthquake zone, every second counts. Early warning systems are already operational in Mexico and Japan. Prior to a massive 9.0 quake in 2011, people in Tokyo got a quake warning of more than 60 seconds. Now the Los Angeles rail system is literally on track with its own early warning program.
All train operators are to stop your train at the next station and hold.
When an alert sounds during this simulation at the Rail Operations Center, supervisors immediately bring all 83 trains in the system to a stop and then take cover themselves. In a real-world scenario, this all would have happened before the shaking began. Josh Bashiom is founder of Early Warning Labs, one of just a few companies approved by the U.S. government to send out advanced earthquake alerts.
Today they got a 30-second warning. That doesn't seem like much time.
It doesn't, right? But when it takes about 12 seconds to stop a commuter train, or about 10 seconds to take an elevator to the closest floor, or even just 3 seconds to get underneath a desk, you can save a lot of lives.
During an earthquake, seismic waves radiate from the epicenter like waves on a pond. Currently, more than 700 sensors, most of them in Southern California, detect those waves, passing along data that can be used to predict when shaking will start in nearby cities.
Okay, we now have 40 seconds before the shaking's expected to come in here to Pasadena.
Seismologist Lucy Jones helped develop the early warning system for the U.S. Geological Survey. It still needs nearly 1,000 more seismic sensors across the West, but that plan is now in jeopardy.
If the president's budget is passed by Congress, the program will be stopped because this is one of the things being eliminated.
Jones and others hope it doesn't take a disaster to convince lawmakers to keep the program alive.
We finally know what caused the fire that swept through Grenfell Tower in West London, a faulty fridge. The fridge manufacturer, Hotpoint, hadn't recalled that model prior to the fire, but it's now asking customers to check their model numbers and contact the company. Police are still trying to determine how the June 14th blaze spread so quickly. So far, samples of cladding and insulation collected from the building have failed safety tests. Authorities are conducting similar safety tests on 600 buildings across the UK to determine if the same combustible cladding was used in their construction. As of Friday morning, they found it in 11 residential buildings. At least 79 people died or are presumed dead as a result of the Grenfell Tower blaze. Police are considering criminal charges, including manslaughter.
Chinese authorities recently discovered hundreds of migrant workers living in a basement below a pricey apartment complex in Beijing. On June 17th, China National Radio reported that a recent inspection revealed up to 400 people were staying in crowded and windowless rooms underneath Julong Gardens, located in the northeast part of the city. Furthermore, residents only had access to one emergency exit, potentially making the dwellings a death trap. The South China Morning Post reports one of the basement's tenants said rent was about 1,300 yuan, or a little less than $200 a month. That's just a fraction of what people pay for standard apartments in the building. Rising housing prices have forced a growing number of Beijing residents to turn to cheaper accommodations underground. The Chinese government has responded by offering more subsidized housing and by restricting Beijing's population to 23 million by 2020.
These are images of what ISIL says are the ruins of the Al-Nuri Mosque in Mosul. The militant group says the mosque and its 840-year-old minaret were destroyed by a U.S. airstrike. The U.S.-led coalition leading the battle to retake the Iraqi city has rejected the claim. Iraq's Ministry of Defense says ISIL fighters themselves detonated explosives inside the mosque on Wednesday night. It's important because it's where ISIL leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi declared a so-called Islamic caliphate in 2014, shortly after Mosul was overrun by the militants.
The death of Islamic State's leader is almost a certainty. That's the claim made by a Russian senator, quoted by news agency Interfax. He says the likelihood that Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi has died is close to 100%. Last week, Russia said it may have killed the IS leader in an airstrike on the Syrian city of Raqqa, but have so far offered no proof. US officials say they cannot confirm Baghdadi's death. Many regional officials have also poured cold water on Moscow's claims. Baghdadi has frequently been reported killed or wounded since he declared a caliphate in 2014.
Russia has launched a series of cruise missiles at so-called Islamic State targets in Syria. The ordnance was fired from the Admiral Essen frigate and the Krasnodar submarine from the Mediterranean Sea to IS positions in Palmyra. The strikes destroyed command posts and weapon and ammunition stores, according to the Russian Defense Ministry. Russia is seeking agreement with Turkey and Iran to establish 4 security enclaves to bring about an end to the 6-year war.
Iran says Russia can use its military bases to fight terrorists in Syria. Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif says permission will be granted on a case-by-case basis. The statement comes as Iranian President Hassan Rouhani is set to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin at the Kremlin. Now, the pair is expected to discuss several regional security issues, including the war in Syria.
Different note, Otto Warmbier passed away less than a week since North Korea released him from detainment. Pyongyang officials say the American student's death is a mystery to them as well. They denied accusations that Warmbier's brain injuries were from torture and beatings during captivity. The regime's foreign ministry called the 22-year-old a victim of the Obama administration's policy of strategic patience, as the government never requested his release. Its spokesperson added the young man was released last week on humanitarian grounds in consideration of his bad health, then went on to criticize Seoul for using Warmbier's case to seek the release of other detainees.
North Korea has reportedly conducted another rocket engine test to enhance its long-range missile capabilities. Citing unnamed U.S. officials, Reuters reports that Pyongyang may have been testing the smallest stage of an ICBM rocket engine. It would mark the regime's first rocket engine test since it conducted 3 in March. Many experts believe it's just a matter of time before North Korea perfects its ICBM technology. The latest revelation also comes at a time when the U.S. has reported increased activity at North Korea's Seoul nuclear test site.
The Pentagon has been accused of wasting $28 million buying forest-style camouflage uniforms for the Afghan army. In a scathing report released June 20th, Special Inspector General for Afghanistan Reconstruction John Sopko said that the Pentagon purchased a camouflage uniform for the Afghan National Army in 2007 that was riddled with problems. First, the U.S. government didn't own the camo pattern chosen by the Afghan Defense Ministry, meaning it had to pay a private company for its use. What's more, officials bought forest pattern uniforms for a Middle Eastern country dominated by deserts. That means the U.S. government may have spent tens of millions of dollars on uniforms that could actually make Afghan soldiers more visible to the enemy. Senator Chuck Grassley, chairman of the Senate Judiciary, called the report embarrassing and an affront to U.S. taxpayers.
It's one of the most pressing questions Brexit poses for EU citizens. What happens to the nearly 3 million European migrants living in the UK? Well, UK Prime Minister Theresa May says she's got a plan. Let them stay, but only if they've lived in the country for 5 years. Under May's plan, EU citizens who enter the country before Brexit Day will also be allowed to stay and earn resident status. After that, they'll have full access to all the same benefits that UK-born citizens do. German Chancellor Angela Merkel called the proposal a good start, but also said she wanted wide-ranging guarantees for citizens choosing to stay in the UK. One of the EU's demands might be a sticking point. The EU wants citizens to be able to seek justice in the European Court, but May has been insistent British courts would do the job. May plans on submitting the full plan to Parliament Monday.
A leaked report by Swedish police says the number of so-called vulnerable zones in the country has jumped to 23. The areas, often described in Swedish media as no-go zones, have sprung up across the country, particularly in the larger cities. The report adds that a parallel social structure has emerged in those areas, with police facing difficulty carrying out their duties there. The leak partly blames Islamic extremism for the problem. Some service providers have even refused to enter certain areas. In April, mail provider PostNord wouldn't enter Stockholm's Rinkeby suburb, citing security concerns. Rinkeby made headlines last year when police opened fire after a mob of around 30 people began attacking officers with rocks. In fact, the National Police Commissioner says the number of no-go zones is even higher than stated in the leaked report, and he also called for a change of approach.
Well, we see developments in our country which are not going in the right direction always. We see we have a bit more than 60 vulnerable areas in around the major cities of Sweden. And we see criminality there, and we need to turn around development in those areas, and we need assistance of our other parts of society.
The near-daily unrest in Venezuela has culminated once again in the death of a protester. Demonstrations turned violent on Thursday as opposition supporters came under a hail of rubber bullets during their assault on an airbase. Soldiers fired from near point-blank range as protesters attacked the fence outside La Carlota airbase in the wealthy east end of Caracas. A 22-year-old man named as David Jose Bayania died at a nearby hospital as a result of the injuries he sustained during the protest. His death brings the total number killed during the riotous demonstrations that have ravaged Venezuela since the unrest began in April to 76. Hundreds of thousands of Venezuelans have taken to the streets to protest against the clampdown on the opposition, shortages of food and medicine, and President Nicolas Maduro's plan to overhaul the constitution. Maduro says the violence is part of a foreign-led plot to oust him.
Carabinieri police in Rome have seized assets worth about €280 million in a major anti-mafia operation. 23 suspects are accused of belonging to gangs involved in criminal activity such as extortion, loan sharking, money laundering and fraud. Some 46 entertainment venues popular with VIPs around Rome have been raided. Officers have also seized assets from bars, restaurants and arcades. During the country's economic downturn, upmarket eateries have been increasingly targeted by mafia gangs as an easy way to launder money. Also in Rome, the so-called mafia capital case is due to be concluded next month. MPs, bureaucrats and businessmen are alleged to have worked with mobsters to rig public tenders on everything from creating refugee centres to rubbish collection. The owner of the house where Adolf Hitler was born is fighting the Austrian government's right to take possession of the property. The Interior Ministry had been renting the three-storey house near the German border since 1972, but it has remained empty in recent years because of disputes. The owner filed a legal challenge on Thursday. Her lawyer told reporters she had refused offers that were too low from the state.
Die Lösungsvorschläge waren immer ein bisschen, ich möchte schon sagen,
he says the offers regarding the purchase price were half-hearted. At best, it was the sale value of a regular house. There were never any serious talks. Always, everything got blocked, he says.
Keine ernsthaften Gespräche. Es ist immer alles abgeblockt worden.
The Austrian government doesn't want Hitler's birth home to be used as a pilgrim site by neo-Nazis and other groups. The former German Chancellor provoked a global war that cost more than 50 million lives. A decision by the court is expected within the next 2 weeks.
A man who stormed a pizza restaurant at gunpoint because of an online conspiracy theory has been sentenced to 4 years in prison. The conspiracy theory known as Pizzagate alleged that Comet Ping Pong, a Washington, D.C. pizza restaurant, was actually a front for a child sex ring linked to members of Hillary Clinton's staff. Edgar Welch entered Comet Ping Pong on December 4th, armed with an AR-15 rifle and a pistol, and shot at a cabinet where he believed children were being held. Welch pleaded guilty and apologized for his actions. Prosecutors in the case urged the judge to deter others from vigilante justice by issuing a sentence of 4.5 years, while the defense asked for 18 months. Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson sentenced Welch to 4 years and, according to the Associated Press, said his actions, quote, literally left psychological wreckage.
On Thursday, the Roman Catholic Church in the New York City borough of Brooklyn has set up a compensation program for victims of sexual abuse by its clergy. The program is modeled after another archdiocese in New York. In the program, victims who were abused a long time ago, beyond statutes of limitations, were given a chance for compensation. In the Brooklyn diocese, independent administrators will evaluate claims and determine compensation. The Brooklyn diocese says it serves some 1.5 million Catholics in Brooklyn.
The Church of England has admitted that it helped to hide the long-term sexual abuse of young men by one of its former bishops. Archbishop of Canterbury Justin Welby apologized Thursday to the victims of ex-bishop Peter Ball after his church published a report that detailed how senior leaders covered up allegations against Ball over many years. Ball was convicted and imprisoned in 2015 for misconduct in public office and indecent assaults against teenagers from the 1970s to the 1990s. Ball admitted to abusing 18 young men, and he was released from prison after 16 months. One of Ball's victims, Neil Todd, later took his own life. The church's report said, "The church, at its most senior levels and over many years, supported him unwisely and displayed little care for his victims."
It's a car, it is also a plane. It's a car that can transform to a plane, and we think it's a better car because it's also a plane, and better plane because it's also a car. It is 160 kilometers per hour on the road. It is about 260 kilometers per hour in the air in the international standard atmosphere at 70% of the throttle. Yeah, it takes about 3 minutes to fold the wings and prepare the vehicle for the operation. Or the price is between 1.2 million to 1.5 million, which is comparable to small aircraft or general aviation aircraft. But in this price you get also a sports car.
Rosie? You betcha, Mr. J.
Rosie, the humanoid maid in the Jetsons, was a futuristic cartoon character that captivated a generation. But now it's closer to reality. A team from the Italian Institute of Technology believes the robot they've made is smart and dexterous enough to perform basic tasks. R1 can lift up to 1.5 kilograms and navigate around the home thanks to an accelerometer and a gyroscope.
This is a service robot, so it's been designed for assistance, for personal assistance. So it has to be able to manipulate objects, at least to grasp them and move them around. So you'll be able to ask for something like getting a glass of water, and the robot should be able to grasp it and bring it to you.
The market for service robots is not yet developed, but it offers plenty of promise. Most producers are looking into devices to help disabled people.
It's estimated that over 20% of the population have some form of disability, and many of these would benefit from an assistive robot. This could be people from someone with a mobility impairment to dexterity issues, or even someone with autism or dementia who might need assistance with care or social skills.
Another robot, the child-sized iCub, was built to support research in artificial intelligence. It's currently in use in labs in Europe, the US, Korea and Japan. But at $250,000, it's a steep price to pay. But R1 is much cheaper.
This one is 10 times cheaper to start with. So we envisage at the beginning applications in the business applications. So this can be robots for a shopping mall, for a hospital, for an airport. When we eventually manage to hit the consumer market, this will be at the price of maybe $4,000 to $5,000, so reasonably affordable.
For now, the robot is a friendly assistant for the elderly, but soon it may move in to many more homes.